He was detained simply because he wore a suit and held his head high. That night, the police officers had no idea their arrest would spark a fight against injustice. They saw only another suspicious black man, unaware he was an attorney about to challenge the entire system. What he did next would surprise even the most seasoned. But let's start from the beginning. The evening was crisp and quiet as Elijah Williams, a 32-year-old black attorney, walked home after a demanding day in court. He moved with purpose, dressed impeccably in a tailored gray suit that matched his composed, focused demeanor. His short, neatly styled black hair framed his face, and his expression was one of quiet determination. On his wrist gleamed an elegant watch, a recent gift from his colleagues in recognition of his hard work. In his hand, he carried a leather briefcase, filled with legal documents he planned to review later. Little did he know, his night was about to take an unexpected, disturbing turn. As he turned onto a quieter street, Elijah felt someone's eyes on him. Sure enough, a police officer was observing him closely, a white man around 40, with a stocky build and short-cropped blonde hair. The officer's name was Dave, and he exuded an air of authority that seemed to border on hostility as he watched Elijah's every move. "Evening, sir," Dave called out, his tone carrying a hard edge. Without waiting for a response, he approached Elijah with a suspicious look in his eyes, his gaze drifting from the fine fabric of Elijah's suit to the watch on his wrist. "Nice watch," Dave commented, his tone anything but friendly. "Mind telling me where you got it?" Elijah held his ground, keeping his expression neutral. He responded calmly, explaining that the watch was a gift from his colleagues. However, he could feel the officer's skepticism, and each of his answers seemed to fuel Dave's irritation. It quickly became clear to Elijah that this wasn't just a routine check. The officer's line of questioning turned invasive, probing into his profession, his income, and how he could afford what he was wearing. Each response Elijah gave only seemed to aggravate Dave more. Finally, after a few minutes of this thinly veiled interrogation, Dave's patience snapped. He reached out, roughly grabbing Elijah's arm and pulling his hands behind his back. Without further explanation, he slapped on handcuffs, the cold metal biting into Elijah's wrists. "We're bringing you in," Dave said brusquely, declaring it as if it were routine. He cited suspicious activity, though it was evident to Elijah that his only offense was being a successful black man. Elijah's face showed a moment of shock, but he quickly regained his composure. Despite the humiliation and frustration boiling inside, he remained silent, deciding not to reveal his profession just yet. He wanted to see how far this would go, and felt confident that he would find justice in due time. But as Officer Dave ushered him into the patrol car, there was no sign that the officer had any idea of the repercussions awaiting him. At the station, Officer Dave and his partner Ben, a white officer with a tense, hawk-like gaze, began to rifle through Elijah's belongings with an air of assumed authority. Ben's hands moved methodically, but with a certain unease, as he searched through Elijah's leather briefcase, uncovering legal documents and a professional ID. He handed it to Dave, who took a closer look. Dave's face shifted from smug satisfaction to confusion, and then to an unmistakable unease as he read Elijah's full name and the address of his law firm, a well-known practice dedicated to defending civil rights and holding the police accountable for misconduct. The bold letters "Attorney at Law" gleamed on the card. For a moment, Dave's expression was frozen in surprise, realizing the significant misstep he might have just made. His forced confidence faltered, and he shot a quick, tense glance at Ben, who was also starting to understand the gravity of their situation. Trying to mask his anxiety, Dave forced a smirk and attempted to maintain control of the narrative. He looked at Elijah with a feigned confidence, attempting to assert his authority by accusing Elijah of being an aggressive troublemaker who resisted their orders. But the attempt fell flat. His tone now carried a detectable hint of nervousness that wasn't there before. Elijah remained calm, his face an unreadable mask of composure, yet his eyes revealed a quiet, simmering determination. He didn't need to say anything. He simply watched the two officers, aware of how they were gradually realizing the depths of their error. Each passing moment only intensified their discomfort. Elijah knew the power dynamics were shifting. and he had no intention of revealing his next move just yet. Instead, he let Dave and Ben's confidence erode under the weight of their mistake, fully aware that his experience as an attorney and his specialized knowledge of cases like his own would soon become his most potent tool in seeking justice. The hidden truth was out, and it was only a matter of time before these officers would be forced to reckon with the full consequences of their actions. Meanwhile, a bystander's video of Elijah's arrest had quickly gone viral across social media platforms. The footage showed the officer's treatment of Elijah, sparking a wave of anger and solidarity online. Thousands of comments, hashtags, and reposts condemned the officer's actions as blatant examples of racial profiling and police misconduct. The public outcry grew, with prominent activists and social justice advocates amplifying the story, demanding accountability. By evening, major news outlets had picked up the story. Headlines called attention to the injustice, naming Elijah Williams, an attorney who had been subjected to an unlawful detainment, as a symbol of the struggle against systemic bias. His story became a rallying cry, resonating with countless people who saw themselves in his experience and igniting calls for reform. Under intense media scrutiny and mounting public pressure, the police department was forced to hold a press conference to address the incident. Elijah was invited to speak, and as he took the stage, the room was filled with journalists, activists, and members of the community eager to hear his account. His calm yet firm voice carried through the room as he recounted the details of his detention, emphasizing how deeply ingrained biases lead to wrongful accusations and how countless others face similar treatment daily. In the back of the room, officers Dave and Ben sat with rigid postures, forced to witness Elijah's every word. With each pointed statement about their actions, the tension in the room thickened, and their previous confidence crumbled under the weight of public scrutiny. Elijah's powerful words painted a vivid picture of the injustice he had endured, and his presence at the podium, unwavering and dignified, only intensified the shadows cast over the officers. The once quiet attorney had become a voice for justice, leaving no doubt about the change he intended to pursue. With unwavering resolve, Elijah gathered his strength and announced his decision to file a civil lawsuit against the department, and specifically against officers Dave and Ben for abuse of power and racial discrimination. Standing before a captivated audience, his calm professionalism was striking. His words echoed through the room, igniting a wave of applause from supporters who saw in him a beacon of hope. Elijah's commitment to seeking justice fueled the public's demand for accountability, and the applause carried the weight of a community finally given a voice. Under mounting public and media pressure, the officers were compelled to issue a formal public apology, though the damage to their reputations had already been done. Their faces showed resignation as they delivered carefully worded statements, yet the community knew that their forced apologies were only the beginning. The scrutiny and likely career consequences they faced now stood as a potent reminder of the change Elijah was pushing forward. Soon after, the police department, feeling the weight of public backlash, announced an overhaul of its policies. Mandatory racial bias training, new community engagement protocols, and oversight mechanisms were swiftly implemented. These changes were a direct response to Elijah's determined stance, and he became recognized as a powerful force for justice. His case resonated deeply, becoming a symbol of resilience against discrimination and a rallying cry for others who had suffered in silence. Elijah's bravery and legal acumen not only held those officers accountable, but also planted seeds for a fairer system. His newfound reputation as a relentless advocate for justice inspired countless others, transforming him into a figurehead for hope and the fight against racial injustice. Through his actions, Elijah had not only triumphed over his own mistreatment, but had forged a legacy of empowerment for those who, like him, had faced discrimination and longed for change.